everybody. Welcome back to my channel, From Small Things. My name is Sue and I'm a scrap quilter who lives in southeastern Pennsylvania. And we've had another really hot week where I really didn't spend any time in my sewing room, but I still have some treats in store for you this week anyway. First of all, we're going to take a little virtual tour of a little mini quilt exhibit. It's not really a quilt show. I mean, I guess it is, but a little bit about the exhibit that I'm going to walk you through is it is from a place called European Patchwork Meeting that is originally from Alsace, France, and it started in 1995. This is only the third year that this exhibit has come to this part of Pennsylvania. Once they do the judging, this exhibit then travels throughout the world. And it only comes to one place in the United States, and it just so happens to be the town where I live at. It comes to the Schwenkfelder Library and Heritage Center. So I've seen it now 3 years in a row. Each year they choose a different theme, and this year's theme was oceans. And I don't know what the parameters are for judging or for interpretation of a theme. I just see the finished exhibit once it goes on tour. There were 172 participants this year from 26 different countries. They choose 30 quilts to do the tour. So one of the things seems to be that it has to be a very specific size. All of the quilts that we saw were the same size. But the variety on the theme and the techniques that are used really are very wide. So we'll do that first. We'll take a quick little quilt show. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Like I said, this was the third year and it was oceans. The first year that I saw, it was the theme was folk tales. And that was really interesting because you're getting people from all over the world. So different countries have different folk tales. And then the year after that, it was just called tribes, however you want to interpret that. So there were a lot of really family-oriented themes in that. And again, because it was from all over the world, it was very, very interesting. So after we take this quick little tour, I'll come back and then I'll catch you up on everything that I've been working on this week. So I hope you enjoy the show. This one was made all with equilateral triangles, and I think this is the only one that was made by somebody from the United States. And she sort of made them in long strips and then put them at a diagonal. This is a mermaid coming up to the surface. When we were in there, there was a little girl with her grandmother in there, and she kept talking about how she loved the mermaid the best. This is the one that they were using every time that they advertised for this show. The waves on this actually had some gold metallic thread around the outside edges of them. That was really pretty. This one they used indigo to dye the backgrounds, and the lighthouse was actually a photograph that was transferred onto fabric. The colors and the scale of this one were really eye-popping. This one really grabbed your attention. It was nice that all those little bands of blues and greens at the top, that they were all pieced also. This one kind of reminded me of an album cover. I don't know what band it would be, but I kind of feel like there was a band that had something similar to this. And each one of those black lines on there was super, super thin, like a little flange on there, but that was all pieced in. This one had a lot of handwork on. Those trees were all embroidered by hand. This was hand quilted. And the sea foam down at the bottom here, that was all done by hand. And the rocks were done with, I think they used wool, and then they crocheted like a chain stitch and attached that on, so it's very dimensional. Out of everything in the exhibit, this one really popped because they used green, where most of the other quilts were largely dominated by blue. So this one really stood out. This one was schools of fish with like beams of light shining down through the water. This one was done sort of as a collage quilt, which I've never done a quilt like that, but I imagine you've got to be really meticulous about getting your colors just right. This one was really pretty too. This was interesting. There were some faces that were quilted into this. There's one there on the rocks, and there's one there in the water. The background of this quilt is done in a pattern that's called Storm at Sea. This was the first quilt we saw when we came into the room. A storm at sea in a glass jar. This one had some nice vivid colors on it too, lots of different kinds of fish. This one was about the trash that they find in the ocean. The background is all made out of tea bags, and then which they dyed. And then I don't know how they did. I don't know how they did that. It did say on the card that went with it, but I don't understand the process that they used. This was a very popular one. There were several children in there with their grandparents, and they really gravitated towards Nemo. Steampunk Nemo. This is the back of the quilt. All that thread work. That's a lot of thread work. That's miles and miles of thread. This is all thread work also. Some of the quilts they had hanging in the center of the room so that you could easily see the front of the quilt and the back of the quilt. This is the front of the quilt, and that's all thread. And this is the back. This was really cute. the back. And here we have our second polar bear making an appearance on the quilt. This one looked like it had been cut out of like a little kind of fleece blanket. It was very fuzzy and dimensional. I like this one too. It just felt like there was a lot of emotion in this piece. And his hat was actually like a knitted cap. This is the back of that one. I've never done any work like this, so I can't imagine what goes into making it. Well, I hope you enjoyed the show as much as we did. It's always nice when it comes to town, and I just want to apologize for maybe some of the colors in the quilts were not true to life, because the lighting in the area really was not the best. Some of the quilts were lit pretty nicely and others not so much, and the lights seemed to have like a pinkish cast to some of them. So Pam did the best she could with editing and stuff, but just know that we're aware of it and we did the best we could. And you know, when you're there in person, it's completely different than, you know, when you're filming through a device. So first I want to talk about the quilt on the door. I just hung up a blue and white one since we're talking about the Oceans exhibit, and there were many quilts there that featured blue in the quilts. This one I made years and years ago. And this is the template that I used. This is by Creative Grids. It's called the Roundup Tool, and it was designed by Terry Atkinson, and it has two different sizes of the melon shape on. That was the smaller one, and this is the larger one here. And it shows on the ruler that you can use it either just to make the melon shapes like that, or you can make a full circle, or you can do like a drunkard's path sort of cutout with that too. And it's got a squaring up section in the middle with 2 holes in it, but I didn't use that part, so I don't know how to use that part. And then I did the larger one, and I think I'm almost positive I used like freezer paper on the back and then turned the edges under 1/4 of an inch but then I did machine applique them down. So I did not do them by hand, which is unusual for me. I do like doing things by hand, but I also do like trying different techniques, and so that I have like another tool in my toolbox, so that I'm at least, you know, aware. I give it a try. And I put a lot of quilting on the white, the negative spaces there, and then I didn't put any quilting at all on the melon shapes, so that they sort of stand out more. They almost pop out at you. Because I do remember I did see somebody else's quilt at the time where that was the technique they used for quilting, and I really liked the effect that it gave. So I didn't copy their quilting pattern or anything. I just took that idea, and theirs was done by machine, but I did mine by hand, but I just kind of used the same idea on mine. So that's what I have on the door this week. And one other quick little update I wanted to share was my ball of twine that I have. I do have a video about how I make my twine, and I believe it's just called Making Twine. It's pretty simple. So this was really huge, and I decided to give it a try and make a rug with it. And so this is still attached. So this is how big it is now. So it's coming along pretty nicely. I don't think I'm going to make it much bigger. And I'll tell you why. This is all I have left. So, although actually I did start making another ball. But this one, while I'm working on it, it lays really nice and flat. But then if I go to lay it down at a flat space, I do get a little bit of buckling. But when I let it, when I'm finished for the day, what I do is I put this underneath another throw rug that I have to weigh it down. And it kind of evens it all out. It does lay flat then. There's no buckling at all on it. And so that's kind of why I think I'm not going to go any bigger with it, because I'm kind of afraid it might get worse. Right now, I know I can get it to lay flat. And especially once I actually start walking on it, I know it'll flatten out. So I'm not worried about it too much at this point. I just don't want to put a lot of work into something then that is not going to work. So I think I'm almost done with it at this point. And I'm really happy with it. I like the look of it, and it was a lot of fun to do. And I also enjoyed being able to take something like this when I house sit for other people. It's a really nice take-along project. So that's the update on the rug. I think maybe if I do another one, I might do a different technique on how to put it together. We'll see. But for now, it's going along pretty good. The last video that I had, I was talking about a quilt that I'm making with using blue and white half square triangles, and I had a few people ask me about the papers that I use, and I apologize for not giving more information, because I think in the back of my mind, I assume that if people are watching quilting videos, they know a lot of this stuff that I'm doing to begin with. And I should not assume that. That was wrong of me. So again, I apologize for that. So today I'm going to give you a little tutorial on using these papers. The ones that I use that I prefer are called Star Singles. And these I bought from Missouri Star Quilt Company. The size that I usually buy finish at 2 inches. So the size that it says on the package is the finished size. So these are 2 inches, and it makes 8 of them at a time. This is what one paper looks like. And it's a thin paper so that it can tear easy. And so I think they recommend you cut your squares at either 6 inches or a little bit more than 6 inches. I cut my squares at 6.5 because I found sometimes, maybe I go too fast when I sew them, but sometimes they can like shift like just a little bit and get a little wobbly. So I usually just oversize them a little bit. So what I do first is I lay down the dark one, and then I lay down the light one on top, right sides together like you normally would on your fabric. And then I put one of these papers on top. I always put it on, well, I'm doing blue and white squares, so I want the darkest fabric on the bottom, so the white on the top. So then I'll usually put a pin right through the middle. And these lines here that have the little arrows, that's where you're going to sew it. So you can see there are no lines here right in the middle, so that's why I put my pin right in the middle, because my pin won't come anywhere near my seam lines then. So I'll do 2 of these, and I'll kind of show you how I feed them through my machine. You want to make sure your paper is on there so that you have a little bit of fabric poking out around the edges. This does get trimmed then, but it also, this really does give you great accuracy. So there are numbers on here on your sewing lines. So this is number 1, meaning this is the very first line that you're going to sew. And then when you get to a corner, you stop and you pivot, and then you come up number 2, and then here's number 3, so you pivot up here and go down. So you basically go around the square 2 times until you come down to number 8, and then you're finished. So I'll show you what that looks like. So not only do I put a pin in here, sometimes I get a little clip, just a little sewing clip here, and I'll put that down there then also. And on my machine, I have a ledge that I created for my 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I take that off when I do these. So I'll start, and my seam, or my stitch length, I do put it down lower. I don't have a computerized machine, so I can't tell you the exact number, but it's I think it's 2 clicks under the number 2. So it's 1 point something. If I had to guess, maybe 1.6 or 1.8. And it doesn't have to be exact, but you do want a smaller stitch length so that you can tear this paper off. So now I'm lining up this line right here with my needle, because I want my needle to go right on that line. And I can start out here a little bit, because this solid line, that's all going to get trimmed away. That's all waste. So I'm going to stay right on that line the best that I can, and then slow down when I get up there, and then lift and pivot. And I do have a knee lift for my machine, and if I were doing like a lot of these, maybe I would use it. I tend not to use it. This is just so automatic for me to do with my hand. It's not an issue for me. So then I'll go up number 2. And if you don't get exactly in the middle of that circle, sometimes instead of spinning it all the way down, it's not going to be on that line then. I just kind of do it at an angle that will put me on that line. So now I'm right on that line again. And sometimes I'll overshoot it once just to show you. Like if I go like a little bit too far, I'll kind of turn it. Actually, that's right on. I tried to overshoot it, but I didn't. But if I had to, I would just lift up the needle and just nudge this over, you know, just a little bit, just to realign it, and just keep going. When I get to the number 4 too, that's usually when I take that pin out, because by then it's already sewn on 3 sides and the paper's not going to shift. And I can take that clip off now. Now I have it sewn on 4 different sides and everything is stable. See, that one's not right on. So instead of taking one more stitch and going past the dot, I'm actually going to turn this and take a stitch almost sideways. And then that puts me right on the line. And then when I get down here to number 8, I just run it right off the paper. And then I can pick up my next one, and I want line number 1 to go right in where my needle is. And I have a little bit of wiggle room before I actually get on the line that I can, if I'm off like by just a stitch, I can correct it before my needle hits it. And then I can clip this one and then keep going on this one. Okay, so now I'm going to trim them and cut them apart. And when I trim them, I trim all 4 sides on the outside edge first. And when I trim them, and this might vary for you, when I put my ruler up against that line, when I first started doing this, I tried to put my ruler as close to that line as I could and then trim. And, you know, most of the time that's fine. But in my mind, what I'm telling myself now, it helps me to position my ruler a little bit differently. In my mind, I'm trying to cut this dark line, this solid line, in half. And so I don't want to see any of that line on this paper, and I don't want to see any of that line on this paper. And so down here it looks a little better, but up here I can see just the thinnest part of that black line. So now I tell myself, instead of putting my ruler like right against to cut on that line, I just tell myself to try and cut this line in half, which is a really thin line. And I don't know why that's kind of helped my accuracy. It seems like such a small thing. This line actually looks exactly like how I cut that line. But overall, I think it has improved how my cutting is. And that one's even better. And then so I'll cut the 4th one off. Okay, I'm happy with that one. And then I'll cut this, the next I'll cut is straight this way and then on that line. So your solid lines are your cutting lines. And again, I try to be really careful with my cutting because that's where your accuracy is going to come in. And a lot of times I do try and line it back up again. And again, I used to always line up on this line, and I really haven't had a problem with it, but now I try and look at the words and line up the words because I think my accuracy's gotten better, actually, if I look at lining up the words. And then I turn these out and these down, and now they're basically all oriented up so that I can cut them. I can just go cut 4 of them pretty quickly. And this is the only line that the accuracy doesn't really matter on. I mean, I try and get it on the line, but I don't care if it's off a little bit, because this is where your seam is. So when you open it up, that's where it's going to open up no matter where you cut it. So that's the only part on the whole paper where the line is not as critical. But you still want to make sure that your seam allowances are fairly consistent. Then I take these over to my ironing board in a stack. And now all of my dark fabric is on top. I really don't want to turn my iron on today because it's so hot. So I'll just finger press to show you. It's so hot today again. So because now my dark is always on top, I fold that back and I'll press this back with the iron. And I'll just do that with big stacks of these when I get them. And then I go back and I'll trim off the dog ears. I usually do that with the scissors. And then I can take the paper off. So I usually hold on to the small part here, make a little tear at the top. It comes off pretty easy. And then I can tear that part off. And that's all I have to do now. I don't have to get a different ruler out and try and square everything up. Basically, the only part that I have to do before I can use this is cut the dog ears off and then just remove the papers. So, and then you have 8 of them right away, and they're all perfectly sized. And because it's been so hot again, I have still not started hand quilting another quilt. It is just way too hot to have a quilt on my lap to work on, and that's typical for me in the summer. I usually play it by ear as far as the weather goes, and because I want to enjoy this isn't a job. I'm not going to force myself to do something that I know is going to be really uncomfortable for me. So I don't have another quilt that I'm hand quilting, although I do have another quilt that I'm making a little progress on, and I'll share that with you right after this one. This is what I've been working on the last 4 or 5 days. This is embroidery, and I talked about this in the last video. Pam got me this kit for my birthday last year, and I had just ordered all of the floss that is needed to complete this. And this is a kit by Jack Dempsey and Jack Dempsey Needle Art, and this is what the paper looks like that came with it. They have, at my local quilt shop, they have a lot of embroidery kits, a really nice selection. And this embroidery kit, this is the legend on the back that tells you where your colors go. This is easy because there are only 2 colors on it, and they recommend that, let's see, here are some other just general instructions. On here, they recommend that you use 3 strands, that you separate your floss in 18-inch lengths, and then use 3 strands of floss. So that's what I started doing because they did give recommendations on how many skeins that you need to complete this. And so I went by their recommendations when I ordered the floss. So I feel like I should have enough if I use 3 strands. So once I started working on this, I kind of changed my mind pretty quickly. I altered it a little bit so that it will work better for me. Sometimes I use a hoop and sometimes I don't. For me, it sort of depends how close to the edge I get, and how, like, if I need a little more structure, maybe I might use it. It just kind of depends on the scope, the size of the motif I'm working with. I can do it either way, so really it's whatever is comfortable for me. So what did I change? Well, as I started off, I started in the center here, and I used 3 strands. I started with a very light blue, so I was using 3 strands for everything here. And some of these little circles here, there's a bigger one, then a little one, then a bigger one, and then a little one. And some of those little ones, I thought were too small to use 3 strands on. So once I got out here to the next round with some of the smaller ones, I was using 2 strands. And I think that gives me a better definition of the shape if I use 2 strands on the really small shapes. I think I did use 3 strands on one of those before I made the decision, no. And so it was obvious, you know, when I switched, and it did make a big difference. So that was one change I made. And then another change I made was they recommended using a stem stitch for everything on here. And I thought I would like to change things up a little bit because I do like to do embroidery and I like to do other stitches as well. So I did a chain stitch around here. So around the center motif is a chain stitch. And then in these larger circles here, I also did a chain stitch. For the smaller circles, I kept it a stem stitch, but for the larger circles here, I did a chain stitch in there. And the chain stitch, I believe, will probably take more floss. And so I was a little worried about that because of, you know, what I had ordered. I didn't want to run out. So that was the other change I made, was instead of using 3 strands for the chain stitch, I used 2. So with each length then of floss, I can get 3 needles worth out of that instead of just 2. And then for the outside part here, this part I went back to just doing a stem stitch using 3 strands. So I've been trying to keep cool and still working on some things, but you know, anyway, this has been making me happy. It's been a while since I've had an embroidery project to work on, and once you see it start to come together, it's a really good feeling. So this one block here, I've probably been working on this for about 4 days. It's, you know, there's a lot of stopping and starting and you know, changing needles and stuff, and I wasn't working on it for like 8 hours a day or anything. And then each panel you get has 2 motifs on it, and each package that you get gives you 6 blocks total. So I got 2 packages, so I will have 12 of these blocks total. And I'll probably put some kind of fancier sashing in between all of these blocks, but this isn't going to get done this year. I do not want to rush this. I really enjoy the process of it a lot, and so I'm just going to take my time on it and just kind of pick it up here and there, you know, when I feel like it, or if I need a break from something else that I'm working on. So I have one more thing to share with you before we go. So we have to go into the basting room to share that one. And this is the last thing that I'm kind of actively working on right now. And by actively, I mean maybe about an hour a day, because this is upstairs on the 2nd floor, and again, it's just too hot. So if I can just get like a few lines of sewing in here, I'm done for the day. I don't need to make myself miserable. There's no timeline on this at all. So this is the quilt that I'm making for my friend Shannon to go along with the memory pillows. These were the leftovers, and I just tried to make 8-inch blocks any way that I could with the leftover fabrics. So this is it. I tried to like distribute it as evenly as I could. There's no way that I was going to be able to get things without, you know, like colors matching. And sometimes when you play around with that to try and move one to another space and then exchange that with another one, then you realize, well, now these 2 are matching. So then you keep, you know, switching and trying new things, and sometimes then the whole thing ends up getting much worse than what you had originally started off with. So once I got it to a point where I was pretty happy with it, I let it go. I just let it go. And so yes, there are some things where, you know, like colors match, and I'm okay with that. And again, she's not a quilter. She's not looking at the same things that I'm looking at. I know she's not. She's looking at a lifetime of memories. That's what she's going to see. So what I'm doing is, and I've never done this before actually, instead of basting the quilt, this is not basted at all. I just laid it out like I normally would, and I'm using a big needle and some pearl cotton, and I'm just putting in big stitches because I knew that hand quilting in my traditional way was not going to work on this quilt. Some of these fabrics are really tough to get through, even with a big needle, and doing it with pearl cotton. The ones that are especially tough to get through are this one here. This one's a lot heavier, and this one here, and this one here with the stripes. These are the three worst to get through. They're just really heavy. This one is the easiest because this was a linen, and then this one too is very easy. That was just a dress shirt, a button-down dress shirt, and all of the others are medium. They're okay to get through. So I have most of the quilt done with 2 stitches on both sides, each side of the seam, going down. So I just have to finish up here, and then I'll put 2 stitches going down here, and then all of this way is done. And then I'll come back and do the same thing going this way. Put in 2 lines of stitching here going in the other direction. And if the weather was really cool, I could have this done in an afternoon. But like I said, I'm not going to make myself go crazy or feel really too hot over this, because the heat's kind of been wiping me out too. I've been feeling just like I need just more naps. I just get tired. And I'm not the only one. When I talk to my friends, we're kind of all in the same boat. So I hope everybody out there, I hope you all are staying as cool as you can be. And I hope that you're enjoying your summer vacations or summer activities with family and friends. And I hope that you're getting a lot done in your sewing rooms too. So thanks for joining me, everybody, and I'll see you next time. Take it easy.